It truly does feel like 2020 again, because Warzone's pretty good, but the one thing that everybody is still complaining about is audio. Whilst I have been having a fantastic time with the new version of Warzone, there is one thing that's on everybody's mind right now, and it's why is the audio in Call of Duty Warzone so bad? And this is a conversation that is happening to peak up again recently, but it's been a conversation for a very long time in all of Warzone. It was a conversation back in Verdansk, and it's a conversation again in Urzikstan. But why is Call of Duty audio so bad, and what is fundamentally wrong with how audio is approached by Call of Duty that is causing these problems? Because there are thousands and hundreds of other games that have never had these issues. And you can go out there and play PUBG and Apex Legends right now, which are large format battle royale games, and never experience the kind of audio issues that present themselves in Call of Duty. There are two fatal flaws with the current system in Call of Duty that we'll talk about in this video today. The first major flaw are some of the underlying bugs in the system, and the second major flaw is the actual philosophical approach and overall audio mix that Call of Duty is using. So first up, let's talk about the bugs, because there are quite a few of them at the moment that are exacerbating the overall feeling that there is no audio in the game. There's a pretty critical bug right now where the announcer doesn't call in if somebody's landing on your head, which is a fairly major problem, as you can imagine. And there's also another fairly major bug where it appears as though the Resolute perk is applying dead silence when people take damage. If somebody's shot at whilst Resolute is in their perk package and it activates, it appears that their footsteps seem to go to basically zero for a period of time. There's another glitch in the game where going underwater or hitting the ground at a certain level of speed will cause your audio to sound permanently muffled for a certain period of time, as though your head is slightly underwater or you have suddenly decided to wear earmuffs. You can experience this a couple of times because the audio just sounds overwhelmingly chalked for a short period of time, and this is something that also needs addressing. And finally, and most interestingly, in the category of bugs that I've seen so far in Warzone, take a look at this clip from my stream today.
Oh, hello. That guy's made me very weak.
That guy's gun made no sound in my game. This is somebody full autoing an assault rifle, seemingly with no suppressor, about 10 to 15 meters away from me, and I received zero audio from that player firing their weapon at full speed. Now, these are audio bugs. They're not fundamental philosophy design errors. They are just things that aren't working correctly and probably will have to be fixed. And these are the frustrations that I have personally experienced. But I was very surprised to go on social media and see a lot of people talking about a lack of footsteps in Call of Duty, because I personally have not had that problem. And this isn't down to me randomly gaslighting my audience and saying that the footsteps are fine and working accordingly. In fact, it simply highlights the fundamental flaws of what is wrong in Call of Duty at this point in time. And it allowed me to identify why everybody is having trouble with audio and why I personally have not had any issues with footstep audio. When I bounced around a bunch of the streams and a bunch of other content creators' channels, I saw that a lot of them were playing Call of Duty Warzone anywhere between about 50 to 70% volume, which is what they have to do to avoid the overall sound of their game from completely blowing out their eardrums. If you play this game at 100% volume with no other effects applied, the sound of gunshot audio or the sound of you getting in a plane is abnormally loud to a point where it probably could genuinely harm your hearing if you used it at that level. But at the same time, playing at 100% volume is effectively the only way to get the highest possible effects volume, like footsteps. This is where things are different for me, because I play my game at 100% effects volume with a couple of little audio tricks that I do to achieve that. But before I get into those technical details of how my setup's different and how it explains what's wrong with the Call of Duty audio mix, I'm just going to show you an example. This is what Call of Duty sounds like at 100% volume without any audio effects applied, and you'll be able to see just how loud the gunshots are. Now this is how I play Call of Duty Warzone and generally Call of Duty, and you can see that the gunshots are significantly quieter. This is because I'm using specialized audio techniques in order to achieve this outcome, and I'm using certain effects within certain softwares to reduce the overall sound of gunshots in the game while still keeping my volume at 100%. Now, you've probably seen online most streamers and content creators using something called loudness equalization, which is a setting on their PC and something that's not even available to people who play on console. And loudness equalization is effectively a compressor, which increases the volume of low frequencies and low sounds like footsteps and minor effects, but reduces the sound of louder effects like gunshots and explosions in Call of Duty. Now, this is a decent idea, but the reason that this doesn't necessarily work is because even with loudness EQ applied, most people still have to turn their game down. Because whilst the audio levels have been balanced out, the audio is still, generally speaking, loud. So although their footsteps are slightly louder and their gunshots are lower, because the game is still overwhelming for them, they probably end up putting it at about 60 to 70% volume. And this is where my settings are different. Because I'm a content creator, I use something called Elgato Wavelink, which allows me to send audio to my stream PC and separate my audio tracks for when I'm making content. But one of the cool things about this software is that it allows me to apply VST audio effects to any single audio track. And these are VSTs that are used in music, vocal production, and generally sound engineering. And this is how I can play my game at 100% volume without breaking my ears. Because I'm not using loudness equalization, I'm using a VST effect called a limiter. And there's a big difference. Loudness equalization balances out the audio tracks whilst keeping the general audio output signal still generally quite loud. But a limiter literally physically stops the audio from going past a certain amount of loudness. And I've specifically tuned this limiter to stop gunshot audio going to its highest point, meaning that the rest of the game can be played at 100% volume, but gunshot sounds in particular, which are the ear-bleeding variety, are completely cancelled out. And this allows me to play Call of Duty Warzone at 100% volume in-game without having to necessarily lower the footstep audio to reduce the sound of the gunfire. Because when you reduce the overall output of the game, you're reducing everything. Ironically, there's something in the game that's fairly close to what you would consider a limiter, and that is the Bone Conductor perk of Modern Warfare 3, which naturally reduces the sound of gunshot audio, or combat audio as they call it in the game, while still allowing things like footsteps through. I'm just doing this all the time, so I've effectively got a guaranteed perk in the entirety of the game. But this isn't an option that's available to everybody. It's something very niche that only a handful of streamers will probably ever be able to use, and it means that for people on console or just regular players who aren't gigantic gigasweats like me, you don't have this available to you. And thus, this kind of underlines the fundamental flaw with how Call of Duty's audio engine and audio mix works. It's that the general sound of things is just too loud. Gunshots are far too loud. Ambient noise in the game is far too loud, and these sounds end up cancelling out the footstep audio because they're so overwhelmingly loud that people are having to reduce their audio output in order to make the game bearable. Because at 100% volume, I can hear the footsteps extremely clearly, and I've had pretty much 0 to no instances where footstep audio has been a problem. But 100% volume is probably something only 1% of players or people who are losing their hearing are using. Because for the vast majority of people, it is too painfully loud to use. So if Call of Duty wants to fix the audio situation in Warzone, they need to not only deal with the bugs, but they need to address their audio mix. They need to make gunshot sounds about 30% lower, they need to make ambient noise in the game somewhere between 20 to 30% lower as well, and the footstep audio, whilst it needs to remain the same, needs to become a higher priority in the overall audio mix. And just generally speaking, the game needs to get rid of annoying audio. Airstrikes don't need to be exceedingly loud to a point where they drown out everything else. And another thing as well is that people who get in the plane at the start of a Battle Royale game are greeted with the audio of an aircraft that is about 200% volume for no particular reason, making most people instantly turn down their game track straight away because it's really annoying. There doesn't need to be overwhelmingly loud airplane audio. At the start of the game, just halve the amount of audio that you get whilst you drop in. Because why wouldn't you? It's a quality of life feature. This should explain most of the issues with Call of Duty's audio, and other than resolving the bugs, I really do feel like the audio mix in this game needs serious addressing. If you like this video, make sure you drop a like, share it to friends, and be sure to subscribe as well. As always folks, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.